Welcome, everyone. Welcome back from Snack, and it's so good to be here. I feel like this is the first time I've been with people in 18 months or something like that. And I'm happy to sub in for James on my old panel, software, and what helps enable micromobility here today. I did this, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that, whenever we were all doing this before. And I am very happy to be joined up here by Zach from Particle, Teet from Comodule, and Pat from Hologram. Do you want to go down and give a quick introduction of yourself and what you guys are all about?
Sure. Should I start?
Please.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Supalla. I'm the CEO of Particle. Particle is a reprogrammable IoT platform for micromobility and light electric vehicles. So we power a range of connected products, many of which are here, bike scooters, mopeds, motorcycles. We also work with a variety of industrial equipment manufacturers to connect heavier duty assets, things, compressors, pumps, valves, things of that nature, anything that's connected. We really focus on making sure that the products that are connected on our platform are secure, scalable, and reliable, and also totally reprogrammable. Doing everything we can to make sure that our customers can build differentiated, custom products with custom software running on our platform, doing whatever is necessary to help solve your customers' problems.
Hi everyone, my name is Teet. I'm from Comodule. At Comodule we provide end-to-end connectivity solutions for manufacturers and fleet operators, helping fleet operators to launch, scale and operate their operations, and helping manufacturers to make their vehicles intelligent, helping them with over-the-air software updates, turn-by-turn navigation, companion applications, anti-theft features, etc. We have been in business for 6 years, and we have been connected nearly 500,000 devices across 50 countries, and working with some of the largest manufacturers and fleet operators across the world. Thank you.
And hi, I'm Pat Wilbur. I'm the CTO at Hologram. Hologram is a connectivity provider. We provide global connectivity, multi-carrier connectivity in each region. And we basically focus on helping you to deploy your first product, be able to scale that to a pilot, scale that beyond seamlessly. So we provide connectivity across like 470 carriers, basically in every country. Our motto is Internet everywhere for everything. I'm the co-founder, so I've been there from the beginning through recent news of our Series B, which was very recent, where we raised 65 million, led by Tiger Global, and just kind of excited to continue scaling and doing what we do, which is delivering programmable connectivity that's seamless everywhere.
Excellent. And I'm a big fan of software because that's the thing that makes these things smarter and able to be more sustainable. We as customers can find them a lot easier, and the operations, getting that smoothed out, this is paramount. So I'm glad you guys are here to talk about this good stuff. So first, we'll go Zach. Particle has built a massive business in this space from, nothing a few years ago. How are you thinking about micromobility, and what do you think is interesting in this space in terms of IoT?
So Particle's been around since 2012. So we, in some sense, I think, sort of predate micromobility. And support a pretty wide variety of connected products. Mm-hmm. A lot of new industries that are becoming connected happened first on Particle, and that happened here in micromobility as well, where we were involved in some of the earliest deployments of connected vehicles. When we launched our first cellular product, we were prototyping with light electric vehicles, but this was back in 2015. And so what we recognize as sort of a general trend is every industry this industry included, is looking for new ways to change how we deliver value through physical assets, right? And whether you're talking about vehicles or whether you're talking about machinery or equipment, this sort of common trend is the old way of doing things is you pay a lot of money for a thing, and then you try and use that thing, hope it lasts for a while. You spend money on service and maintenance along the way. You have to deal with the burden of sort of managing that thing, whatever it is. And every industry is going through their own transformation in terms of turning that around. I think what is interesting about micromobility is how quickly it's happened, and this is different from a lot of other industries where we see similar trends of machinery coming online, being connected, new service models, shared ownership, rental leasing models. What's incredible about this space is it's just gone incredibly quickly. And I think that is driven by the fact that so much about transportation, the traditional way we think about transportation, is fundamentally broken and very, very inefficient. And so as soon as somebody does anything better, then it just explodes. You know, the industry has obviously developed a ton over the last few years, new models, new approaches, a wide variety of different companies trying different things. And so, yeah, it's an exciting space to be in because of how quickly it moves.
Excellent. Yes, I am very much liking the explosion all over the place. If only San Francisco would be more flexible about including more providers. Pat, Teet, I'll go to you first. Comodule, in the same vein, you've obviously gone through after micromobility from the start. How do you think that's helped versus building a more generic platform like some other providers?
We believe that this has been really an edge for us, that we haven't been providing kind of a generic IoT platform, but we have been, since day one, since 2014, we have been really focused on micromobility and working with different partners and customers in the industry, trying to understand what are their pain points and how to solve their underlying issues the fastest. And this is something that we really believe has helped us to get to a significant traction over the time, and also gain the customer portfolio, customer base that we have as of today, and really working together with the customers, understanding their issues and how we can help them to solve them the fastest. And I think this really has helped, and by working with both, we have been really providing IoT, but providing only for bikes and scooters, and for various different use cases. Either it's owned micromobility or shared, or it's a subscription as a service. The needs for all of those are a little bit different, although the underlying technology is the same for all, but the needs are all different everywhere.
I'm so dying to ask if you guys have a favorite of your clients, but we'll have to do that later at the cocktail hour. Okay. Pat, Hologram powers the IoT connectivity in Cowboy, one of the premier e-bikes from Europe, and who we saw earlier on stage today. Let's talk about how that's going. What are some of the learnings from it, and where do you see these partnerships headed?
Yeah, thank you. So as you know, everyone learned today, Cowboy is expanding into the U.S., and you know they've been growing and doing very well. So we congratulate them on that. And yeah, along the lines of learnings, I'd say I think one of the things that's very interesting, and I'll speak to Cowboy's fleet specifically, is that Cowboy, for example, 80% of their devices connect to more than one carrier in a single month. And that might be a higher percentage than a lot of people would expect, especially like pre-deployment. But just kind of looking back at their data, Cowboy, 80% of the time, can't rely on one carrier, or if they only had a single carrier in a particular region, there'd be at least some sort of a quality of service, significant quality of service interruption. So, I think a learning from that is that even when you're deploying, one region here, one region there, being able to leverage seamless multi-carrier connectivity is extremely important. You can imagine a scooter or a bike or other micromobility zooming in and out of alleyways, and you never know if a building's going to be in between you and the tower you're connected to. And I think that's increasingly important. I'll just mention one thing just in general, but it's also true about Cowboy, I'm sure. We've seen enormous growth year over year on average data consumption, even in the case of micromobility. So what we're seeing is people are leveraging that data channel. They're figuring out how to kind of unlock additional value, which depends upon data at the end of the day. So having that reliable connection and having it be as fast as possible, as efficient as possible, and if necessary, being able to seamlessly switch over is of increasing importance.
Can you just elaborate on a little, like what is an example of like this value they're able to unlock, with the data? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's probably better for someone building in this space. But I can try to take a stab. Like we've seen about 150% year-over-year growth in general, kind of cross-platform, and we serve many verticals, not just micromobility. But in general, the trend keeps going toward more and more data. So a company might start and launch a product. It may even be using a radio access technology that is really optimized for like lower data to start. And then as that product evolves through various versions, we see that they adopt radio access technologies that are capable of more throughput, basically more data. And there are a variety of reasons for that, I think. I think one is just the general trend, even outside of micromobility, where the internet was predominantly, institutions at one point, then it was every home, then it was every phone in everyone's pocket, so it's almost like every person. But IoT in general is overtaking that, and pretty soon the majority of devices on the internet are going to be IoT. So the world around us in general is getting more connected, and how those devices interact with one another and with the people that are using them, that are riding, and various value-added services that they can provide, those are all going to need more and more data. So it's kind of a trend across the board, and I think it's the creativity around how micromobility specifically can unlock more value from data. I mean, some of it's going to be through analytics and just analyzing the ride, but some of it's going to be by providing more services to the riders.
So you guys, I came into this space through shared, that's the only way. But we've seen the rise of owned models as well. What do you see as the big opportunity? Is it exclusively servicing shared mobility as it has been in the past, or is there more opportunity with owned fleets? And do you see which one might be bigger over time?
So I think generally what we're seeing is, if we just sort of go through, I think, the history of the industry, at the very beginning of this industry, we started with a lot of off-the-shelf products, like let's use the cheapest scooter or bike we can find that's sort of readily available, and let's get them out, and it was a land grab. And I think that was the nature of a business that seemed very lucrative, but also seemed like one where there's going to be some finite number of vehicles that are out there, and so let's get every vehicle out there that we possibly can. But the problem was there were huge backlashes amongst cities that was not okay. And it turns out the economics of the default model of shared micromobility were kind of upside down. And so there's like a big crest and then this big sort of crash where everybody had to retool. And the first thing that we did to retool as an industry was we tried to figure out how to make everything really cheap. Because if the economics are upside down and it's all based on like value you create per ride, then you just try and make the economics as cheap as possible to turn into something profitable. And that didn't really work out either, because then you just get low quality products. And so what's happened now, and I think this sort of wave of the industry that we're in, is people are recognizing that the requirements of different riders in different geographies are different, and what you have to do is pick the geographies that you're in and really nail the experience for that area, and really not just geography, but the demographic of the people that you're selling into. And so coming back to like shared versus ownership, I think both have opportunities to thrive and are going to be required in different places and different demographics. Like for me, for instance, I was a very heavy user of shared, like back when shared micromobility first started, I didn't have kids yet, and I used it to commute to work, and it was a perfect experience. And now I've got 2 kids, and I have, now I'm using a bike, and I've got like the station wagon bike with the 2 kids on the back, and I have to own it because I'm trying to create an experience for my kids.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be people with kids and people who don't have kids, and people who are commuting far distances who need bikes, and people who are commuting short distances who need scooters. And some cities have hills and some have snow, and so I think what we've seen is just the companies who are succeeding are picking particular sets of customers in particular locations with particular demographics, and they're designing the perfect product for them, and they're really nailing the experience. And as a result, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to be successful by sort of finding the best customers that they can go after, and a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to win with different models.
I totally agree with that assessment, and I will have to talk to you later about who you think is doing it best. Teet, do you have anything to expand on that in terms of shared versus owned? How do you see it?
I would completely agree with Zach that it's not that much about being owned or shared. It's more about getting people on a sustainable way of transportation. And there are different segments at the market and different use cases. Sometimes shared is the best option for someone to commute. Sometimes it's owned the best to commute. And also, what we are seeing from our customer base and what is happening in the industry is that really the line between owned and shared is getting more and more unclear because, for example, in Europe, there's a company called Swapfeeds that does e-bike subscription. Basically, it's Netflix for e-bikes. You can rent an e-bike or also a non-e-bike just for a fixed monthly fee, and they get serviced it for you, and you don't have to worry about maintaining the vehicle. You just pay a monthly fee. And I don't know if that's owned or shared because I'm not like owning the vehicle, but it's kind of shared vehicle, but I still treat it as my own vehicle. And I think that subscription bikes have really a big potential to become, and I think there's a more kind of an unclear line between owned and shared. Also, Swapfeeds being part of one of the largest bike groups in the world, which is Pon Bike. I think that we're also seeing a lot of companies doing both. They sell bikes and scooters directly to the consumers, but they also might do subscription and they also might do shared mobility. And same is happening companies who originally started with bike sharing and scooter sharing, such as Bird. They don't only do bike and scooter sharing now, but they also sell direct to consumer and through a retail their own branded bikes and scooters. So I think at the end of the day, it's more about getting people on a sustainable way of transportation and less about whether it's owned or shared. I think that's less important.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just more of a user experience and is the solution solving the problem. I mean, we've seen this in some other industries. We've seen it with essentially time sharing, real estate, the Airbnbs of the world and things like that. So yeah, I would generally agree. I think it's more about the end experience and if it's solving the need at the time. And I think Zach, you made a good point about how needs also evolve over time for different people.
Here's an interesting thought experiment. So much of what's changed, not just in micromobility, but in all of our lives, has come from our phones. What have we not yet seen come from phones over to micromobility? What do you think will make that transition? And then what, if any, new connectivity capabilities will be required to support that?
I think of a lot of the earlier problems we've been solving and I'd say broadly in IoT and then narrowly within IoT for micromobility, light electric vehicles, the kinds of things that we're talking about here. The first set of problems is you're just trying to figure out how to get the thing connected in a reliable way, right? Pat was talking about this earlier, and it's like, we are very trained by our smartphones, which have been developed for a decade and a half, and so they're iPhone 13, right? Like we're on the 13th generation of that product. It gets increasingly reliable, and a lot of that is happening in a software layer underneath that's been built out over time, and also we self-manage connectivity, like. How many times have you put your phone in airplane mode because you're like, oh, it's not working, I'll just airplane mode off. You switch between Wi-Fi and cellular, and you're self-managing. The challenge with vehicles is they can't do that. there's nobody there to do the management. They have to figure it out on their own. And so a lot of the early problems that we've been solving have been, how do we make sure that the device is reliably connected regardless of the circumstances? It always comes back, right? Because there's nobody there to work to fix it if it's not. And that's sort of like problem one. That where we've already taken a lot of the things that have been developed in software or in smartphones and essentially recreated them for embedded systems and sort of things that don't have screens and keyboards. We've now moved on to, I think, solving the second set of problems, which is thinking about the software applications that run on these devices. And this is where I think the next part of what we pull over from smartphones is the fact that everybody's smartphone is running different apps and everybody's using it. It's a base compute unit that provides different experiences to different customers. And I think what we're seeing in micromobility is that people need to start thinking about differentiated experiences because you have different customers that are looking for different things and also different geographies with different requirements. This is especially true with regulatory environments where I think what we see is like you get your vehicles out and you get them out into City X, and then City X puts in a new regulation that the operator needs to manage whether or not the vehicles are on the sidewalk. They're not supposed to be on the sidewalk, they're supposed to be in the bike lane. Okay, how do you do that? Well, now we need to develop an algorithm to be able to detect, based on the accelerometer data, whether the vehicle is on a sidewalk or is on the street, because you can use the like, dum, 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 that pattern, that's sidewalk, right? Bike lanes don't have that. So you can figure out whether the vehicle is where it's supposed to be or not, using the data that you had, write a new software update, push it out to the fleet. And these are the things that I think, one of the things we really deeply believe is everything that you connect has to be over-the-air reprogrammable. You have to be able to push software updates because you don't know what's going to happen once you get the thing out there, and you really don't want to go through the effort of like pulling it back in. And that is all sort of taking that software experience from smartphones and reimagining them for these kinds of things.
I have to agree with the framework that Zach just painted, that there's a kind of a baseline of the connectivity, which means that, which really has to be super reliable for all the end consumer experiences. And then there's a kind of a software layer at top that enables to add more functionalities. And the philosophy that we really have at Comodule is that that we tell to the engineers and developers that everything may break, but over-the-air updates, they always must work. So this is something that always must work because over-the-air updates enable to either fix the issues that are on the fleet, that are on the streets, or over-the-air updates also enable to add more functionalities and new features to the end consumers. So I don't necessarily, and at the moment, if I think about micromobility, then I think we're somewhere in between of this level 1 and level 2. There are a lot of end user applications that are built that have more functionalities than just, or more use cases that require, from a technical point of view, more than just the cellular connectivity, Bluetooth and GPS tracking, but maybe some of them are adding cameras for sidewalk detection, for some safety features, using accelerometer to detect crashes, again, for safety purposes, etc. So I think that we're kind of in between, because also if one looks at the scooter sharing kind of a track record that is on the market, and or also what are the most typical issues that end users have with the shared scooters or shared bikes, then there is still very often being that, hey, my scooter is in the wrong location, or hey, I'm not able to rent the scooter because the scooter for a reason or another is offline. So I think that it's really the most important is this base layer, making sure that this works perfectly, and then after that we are able to build upon that different features and functionalities. And this is something where we at Comodule, we have taken an approach that we are fully vertically integrated, which means that we design hardware in-house, we do firmware, we do back-end, and we do front-end applications. And also the hardware that we design from scratch in-house, we also produce that in-house in Europe, in Estonia, in Tallinn. So, and I think that's really an edge to make sure that the baseline works perfectly, and then adding different software functionalities based on the use case, either it's owned end consumer scooter bike or it's a shared bike, kind of use cases or functionalities are always a little bit different.
Yeah, and so I think this topic of kind of how intelligent is the user, where in this case, unlike smartphones, the user isn't a human, it's firmware that's using the network. I think that's very interesting because being able to have the context on a device to be able to make intelligent network decisions or self-recovery certainly is very important. I think also kind of on the far end of this though, or the far end of the connection, on kind of the network side, I think there's a lot of room for innovation there. Basically, carriers still predominantly have their business in the smartphone area and consumer area. But I think networks that are intelligent, that are kind of evolving, able to provide more advanced features for detecting faults and basically filling in for that gap, of that intelligence gap of the device or the consumer of the connectivity is very important. I know like at Hologram, one of the things we've been working on is our in-flight, which is a feature that monitors devices that are in the field and can detect faults by analyzing various connection patterns, everything from theft to even just like the cadence of how it's connecting to towers and everything. And I think that, I think it's everything like up the stack is also true, like that's been said here, but there's definitely something to be done on the network side, which I think is important. And then just in general, and I kind of mentioned this before, so I won't repeat it, but we're definitely seeing the trend in micromobility of devices starting with a radio access technology like CAT-M1, which is very low data focused, and then very quickly kind of graduating from that and moving on to larger, higher category connections, very similar to a smartphone. So in some ways, we're definitely seeing like a hardware convergence toward what smartphones are capable of. I know that doesn't exactly answer the question of like what features have been ported over from like an end application perspective, but from like a hardware perspective, we're seeing hardware kind of converge in that pattern.
So this morning, Horace talked about how these vehicles are going to end up as new computing platforms. Do you believe in this thesis? And what should developers or entrepreneurs be thinking about in terms of building cool applications that go on the back of these networks?
Well, I just spoke, but I can talk. The world around us is increasingly becoming connected, like everything's becoming connected. And the capabilities in each device, even micromobility devices, in terms of computing capability, keeps increasing. So as we're continuing to see that data trend just grow and grow and grow across the board in like all IoT, micromobility included, these are definitely becoming more capable of more features. I kind of wonder, to what extent like apps and things like that are going to really port over. I think there may be some types of devices where that'll make sense, but at the end of the day, someone's looking to reliably ride on something. So it's kind of a little bit of juxtaposition in my mind that we've got these extremely capable platforms that could do almost what a smartphone could do, but they also are trying to perform one purpose very well. But what I think will happen is like with that extra capacity, the extra data capacity as well as the extra computing capacity, I think that really paves the way for applications that can make the ride safer, it can make the ride better or more adaptive, because you have that additional computing power locally on the device. Potentially, I don't know if anyone here is working in making scooters autonomous or something like that. But obviously there's capacity there, and what we've seen with technology in general is where there's capacity, where there's breathing room, usually people fill that void with utilizing the connectivity. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of comes of that really soon. But I think safety is one of the things in my mind. Being able to detect unsafe conditions and stuff like that probably will be an early use case for that.
Well, with that, I'm sorry, Teet, go ahead. Go ahead.
No problem. Thanks. I believe that it's not anymore a question whether those new vehicles become computers or on wheels or not, because if one was here early in the day or earlier in the day, then companies like Cowboy or Unagi, they already presented a vision or a product presentation which was very much built around connectivity features, having a companion app that then consumer can interact with the bike, having a GPS tracking bundled up with insurance offering, etc. So I think that that's already happening. There are some companies that are just front runners, and some of the companies that will follow them later on. So eventually that's already happening, and all the shared vehicles that are out there, they are already computers on wheels out of necessity, because they have to have cellular connectivity for a user to start the ride. They have to have a GPS positioning for the user to locate the vehicle, and also for operational reasons, for safety reasons, etc. What we do on most of those shared vehicles, IoT really acts as a central control unit for the entire vehicle, meaning that we run over-the-air software updates, not only to the IoT device on the scooter, but or on the bike. We update an entire scooter, including batteries, motor controllers, displays, etc. And through that, either increasing the safety of the vehicles or also adding new functionalities and features to the consumers. So, and that's already happening, and this is something that I believe will fundamentally change how the bike and scooter industry has worked before.
Thank you. And with that, I will close. You all have mentioned safety, and I will just put in the suggestion box, if you can know that a scooter is on the sidewalk, can you get the cars out of the bike lanes? That's my hope for software. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed the software panel. And with that, on to you, James.